All right, so what's going on, everybody? It's been a while since I've done a Google Hangout on True Talk TV. Today, I want to talk about some issues that have been brought up recently over the Johnson Amendment and separation of church and state.
For almost the first 200 years of American history, pastors spoke freely and boldly from their pulpits about the issues of the day. Pastors preached election sermons, giving instruction to newly elected officials on what Scripture said about the issues confronting government. Pastors also frequently supported or opposed candidates from their pulpits, going as far back as the presidential election of 1800 and continuing through successive elections. But all that changed in 1954 with the passage of the Johnson Amendment, which effectively overturned almost 200 years of church history in America. Dougherty was not going to present much of a problem for Johnson, and Johnson felt that he would easily win re-election. That is, until two very powerful men impacted the race through the nonprofit organizations they had created. Johnson was not trying to address any constitutional issue related to separation of church and state, and he did not offer the amendment because of anything that churches had done. Churches were not banned from endorsing candidates because they are religious organizations. They were banned because they have the same tax-exempt status as Facts Forum and the Committee for Constitutional Government, the right-wing organizations that Johnson was going after. Never let anyone tell you that the Johnson Amendment is intended to protect the so-called separation of church and state.
Okay, so the First Amendment of the Constitution says, Congress shall make no law, zoom in. Congress shall make no law. I want you to notice where the prohibiting is coming from, or aimed towards. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of press, or the right of the people to peaceably to assemble and to petition the governments for a redress of grievances. Just like Trump was saying earlier, a lot of secular organizations or a lot of people in government use this Johnson Amendment as a way to attack people's religious freedom. And things like this have actually been happening throughout the last 60 or 70 years in America. This idea of the Establishment Clause, for example, it isn't historically accurate when we're speaking of American history. If you look at American history, for example, people say that the Establishment Clause, the First Amendment, prohibits government officials or people to pray in schools, or for the government to promote or to participate in the activities of religion. The problem is that if you look at American history, out of the 55 members who wrote the Constitution, 53 of them were devout Christians. The guy who oversaw these 55 members who put together the Constitution was George Washington, who was a very active, God-believing Christian. He had his problems with the church, obviously, but he was a God-believing, God-fearing man. And George Washington, about 11 years after the Constitution was ratified and put together, George Washington himself used federal money and federal property to actually run churches, to use what we would consider the military at that time, to actually participate in choir practices and so on. Many of the other founding fathers actually used federal money to help build churches for some of the Native American tribes. So a lot of this activity was going on by the founding fathers. So it makes sense when you look at what the Constitution, what the First Amendment is actually saying. Notice it again. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of a religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or press, or of the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Everything is restricting what the government can do. What the First Amendment is here for is not to prohibit religion, but to keep the government from interfering in the activity of God-believing people, so that things didn't turn out the way that they were in England at the time. So basically what you have going on here is the last 60 or 70 years, the First Amendment has been reinterpreted to better fit the agenda of these secular organizations. Historically, it's inaccurate and it's incorrect. Now, I can anticipate a lot of different responses that these secular organizations would bring up. For example, the Treaty of AAA, there's a statement in there where it says we are not a Christian nation, and they stop reading there. But if you continue reading it, it says that we are not a Christian nation, as it has an inherent hostility towards the Muslim men. So it's not saying we're not a Christian nation, but it's saying we're not a Christian nation that has an hostility towards the Muslim religion, towards Muslim beliefs, because there was some conflicts going around in Europe at that time. So basically, all they were saying was we're not like these people over here that you have beef with. And it all makes sense. The reality of the situation is that all this is really, and the Johnson Law, all it's being used for is a tool for secular organizations to fight against religious people. You see, a lot of these atheists and these secularists, they understand that they're small in numbers, so they have to use deceptive tactics like this to mislead the public. And unfortunately, the majority of the American public don't understand these things. I mean, if you listen to the way that a lot of these anti-gun people speak, well, we have no purpose for the Second Amendment. We don't need it because, you know, it's a different time and blah, blah, blah. So they're using a lot of the same language in the textbook. So you can see what they're trying to do. They slowly, as time goes on, they reinterpret things, they rewrite things, and because they've changed history, the new generation of Americans, they don't understand this stuff. So this is basically what we're dealing with here. That's why I love what Trump is doing. Trump is taking away a tool that dishonest secularists have used for a long time to attack religion. And I think it's an awesome thing. I wanted to give my opinion on this. I've talked about this for a while actually already. And I think it's actually a very important topic because, look, I mean, there was even an organization in Costa Mesa, California, where they put up a billboard trying to lead people to believe that the founding fathers were against the Bible, and that's obviously nonsense because the majority of the founding fathers agreed with Scripture, and on top of this, you even have quotes out there that say, well, the Bible is the cornerstone for American liberty. You have quotes out there where the founding fathers themselves accredited the Bible for the founding of this country. I mean, the Constitution ties itself to the Declaration of Independence, and the Declaration of Independence mentions God and refers to God more than one time. Even the Constitution uses a lot of Old Testament understanding of law and applied it to the structure of the Constitution. The founders used the Old Testament teachings and implemented it into our forming of our country. So, that's it, guys. That's what my take is on it. Maybe we can do an open hangout on this sometime in the future. So take it easy, guys.